Gentlemen, have you ever found yourself talking to a woman and you recognize the words that she's speaking, but at the same time, she makes no sense? Like it sounds like English, but everything seems to have a completely different meaning. Well, it could be that you have encountered someone who speaks the rare language Womanese. Womanese is a very interesting language and it comes with a fascinating culture where a woman can be a powerful queen but also a helpless victim and occasionally both at the same time. For a native English speaker, it can be very confusing, which is why in today's lesson, I'm going to be acting as translator. We're going to listen to this woman and I'm going to explain what she means in English when she's speaking Womanese.
So, if you want the truth about the date, it went well when he had clothes on. It was all going well. I didn't feel much during the kiss, but I thought maybe that's because we just met. But after a few drinks, I realised I wasn't that into him.
Okay, first lesson. Womanese culture has no concept of consistency. As you saw in the video, you can say twice that the date was going well and in the same sentence say that you're not very into him. Of course, in a native English-speaking culture, such a statement would be considered contradictory, but Womanese culture is not limited by concepts of consistency or logic. This will be further demonstrated when we hear how a woman handles a date that's not going well.
So I thought, do you know what? I need to test him. I need to have spicy time to understand if there's actually chemistry between us because I'm not trying, I didn't feel it that much. So it is spicy time.
Now, of course, in our English culture, that wouldn't make any sense. If you're not feeling with a man, why would you sleep with him? That sort of choice would be considered batshit crazy. But one of the advantages of being Womanese is that you're not restricted by a need to make sense, which is very freeing. Quick note, in Womanese culture, it's considered very trashy to actually say the word sex, and so you use a euphemism like spicy time. And just to clarify, the act of having sex on a first date with a man that you don't like is, of course, not considered trashy. You can brag about that on social media. You're just not allowed to say the word sex.
And I have seen a lot of bananas, but I've never seen one so small.
Now, a lot of native English speakers get confused when they hear statements like this because they assume that in Womanese culture, body shaming is a big cultural no-no. You're never to comment on a woman's age, her face, her weight, her hair. And while that's true, any comments about those would be considered body shaming. In Womanese culture, that really only applies to women. In their culture, it's perfectly acceptable for a woman to shame a man for the size of his penis. The Womanese word is banana. In fact, talking about the length of a man's banana is considered empowering in their culture, particularly if you do it over social media.
But that wouldn't be a problem if I really liked him. I just felt nothing. I was just lying there thinking, I miss my daughter, I want to go home, why am I even here?
Now, I'm going to need people to be very culturally sensitive on this one because I understand in our culture it might be considered strange to think about one's child when you're in the middle of having sex with a stranger on a one-night stand. Even stranger to talk about it on social media where your daughter and all of her friends could recognize you because you're showing your real face. But to consider such behavior as evidence that a woman is making questionable parenting choices is very culturally insensitive because it's actually an ancient tradition in Womanese culture for women to think of their children right at the moment of making self-destructive choices. It's like a local custom. You get used to it eventually. You smoke a cigarette, think of your son. You take a shot of vodka, think of your daughter. You lose all of this week's grocery money at the casino, gambling, think of your children. It's important to not judge their culture simply because we find it strange.
And I can't settle for that, I don't want to live like that for the rest of my life. Also, he had super soft skin and his body was completely hairless everywhere. Even his arms didn't have hair on. Okay, he's from Singapore, but I am not an edophiler, but I felt like one at that point.
Okay, we've got to tread carefully here because I understand in our culture it might be considered racist to speak derogatively about the body types so typical of East Asian men, but you have to understand that in Womanese culture, their ideal man is very different. In fact, I think we have an image. Let's bring that up. Yeah, see, here it is. This is the archetype of male beauty in Womanese culture. See here, you can notice the strong jawline, the thick eyebrows, and that subtle coat of fur that's covering his body. And you can understand in this context why she found a man who had soft skin and no body hair so disgusting. It's just culturally not what she's used to.
And he was cuddling me so much that I just wanted to say, get off me.
Now, this is a common occurrence in womanese culture of women wanting to say something, but not being able to actually say that thing, because to say that thing would ruin their cultural practice of wanting to say something. When a thing is said, it removes the ability of a woman to wish she had said something, and so said things are best left unsaid.
And actually, after the spicy time, I just got up and got dressed straight away. I didn't even want a cuddle, which is weird for me because usually that's the best part for me. I love cuddles when it's with someone I like and I'm into and I love. But with him, it wasn't there. So the fact that I felt that, then I've been feeling depressed, to me says I should never see him again. Now, he wants to meet again on Saturday, but how do I let this guy down nicely? Like, I know I should tell the truth, but he's really into me and I get the impression like he wants me as a wife, so I don't know what to do.
I know her interpretation of his request might seem a little bit strange, but you have to understand that in womanese culture, if a man sleeps with a woman on the first date and then asks to see her again next Saturday night, it's always because he wants her as a wife. So as you can see, her interpretation is completely valid. And she really is in a predicament because while in our culture, this situation could be easily solved. She simply says, oh, I don't have romantic feelings about you in that way. I think it's best we go our separate ways, tell the truth. But in womanese culture, it's a lot more complicated because to tell the truth in a situation like this would mean to give up her primary source of victimhood, how cruel fate is to have put her in this situation. It would also remove her source of attention, which she needs. Everybody, please listen to my story. Please give me advice. I don't know what to do. Again, it's just one of those subtle cultural differences because, of course, in our culture, the purpose of dating is to find a partner so you can settle down, maybe have children with. But in womanese culture, dating is done primarily for the purpose of creating content for social media. To lose her sense of victimhood and attention would be a big loss. And so, yeah, she's in a tricky situation.
Plus, I can't relate to him. Like, the other week, he just bought a £2 million apartment. He's in a £2 million apartment in London. Like, he has that much money. Do you know what I mean? I can't be bought. You can't buy love. So any advice would be amazing. Thank you.
And here is perhaps the biggest cultural difference between a native English speaker and someone from the womanese culture, because of course, from our perspective, this piece of information explains everything. This is why she's so tortured as to whether to see him again. This is why she slept with him so quickly, is he's incredibly wealthy and she's a shallow, superficial gold digger who wants to trade her body for his money. I mean, that's how we would see it, but understand in womanese culture, such an interpretation is considered highly offensive. There are no gold diggers in womanese culture. Every woman is 100% pure in her motivations. In fact, his money is actually a downside because it makes it difficult for her to relate to him. His millions of pounds actually further reinforce her victimhood. So there you have it, a quick course in womanese. I know it can be difficult to understand and it may seem like the more you listen to womanese, the more confusing it gets. I understand it's tough, so if you need further lessons in womanese culture and language, I recommend my other videos on this topic. There's a link to those in the description box below. Now, in our culture, it seems like the dating market is often filled with a lot of lies and fakery and image. We know that women have very high standards for the sort of men that they'll date, and so a lot of men have simply resorted to lying to the women about who they are and what their intentions are. And it makes me ask the question, does that put honest men at a disadvantage in the dating market? Has it gotten to a point where lying is simply expected and any man who doesn't play that game is going to get left behind? Or are there important, energetic, and masculine attributes that can only be accessed via truth, and honest men are actually at an advantage in the dating market? It's a complex topic, and so it took me a lot of time to cover everything that I wanted to say on this video, and it's the latest topic of my Patreon community. For every video that I post here on YouTube, I post an additional bonus video on my Patreon. If you'd like access to those videos, then please come and see me at Patreon. It only costs $7 a month to get instant access to that video, plus about 300 other videos that are in my exclusive Patreon back catalog. Or if you're feeling a little bit overloaded on theory, you watch videos like this about dating and relationships and female psychology, but you don't actually understand how it relates to real people, real situations, then I have the perfect thing for you. It's my paid course, 100 Sides of Women, because this features 10 real stories with heaps of individuals with their own motivations, their own plans, and your job is to psychologically diagnose the behavior and the reasoning behind these people. Of course, I give my answers too, so in addition to testing you, it also educates you. The reviews have been absolutely incredible. It's a very in-depth course. There's 6.5 hours of video footage. It only costs $50, and I also offer a 100% money-back guarantee. There's literally no risk in buying this thing. There's a link to a video in the description box that explains how the whole thing works.